I know now what I want to say in my intro for my podcast. I'm going to start with a warning to other creatives. Create like it's your last podcast, last graphic, last painting, last blog post. There's so many forces out there that want us to be bland, and that is not possible with this fro. I have too many thoughts about celebrating us, reading what I want to read, pointing out donkeys, what links us together and shouldn't tear us apart. I'll also give you bonus content through TNFro's Bar on my Patreon, and if you become a melanated nerd. I also will share content about getting the real tea on Reality-T. Join me in this episode of TNFro Is Reading for the wild ride, and thank you for listening. I am just happy with the changes I've been able to make in my podcast. I am working on making the podcast itself, the recording atmosphere, making it as quiet as possible to make sure that there's not a lot of background noise, as well as using a pretty good microphone sitch that is also allowing me to modulate my voice and keeping an eye to make sure I'm within a range. But sometimes it's hard, y'all, because I get excited and I start yelling. And I always am excited to being able to report positive momentum as far as my glow up is concerned. I contacted my main platform that I publish on Podbeam, and the people at the help desk were instrumental in doing something like refreshing the podcast. So, and because I was watching my downloads increase because I'm well over 200,000. Boop, 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 boop. Yes, I've been watching Sonia Richardson Ross on Real Housewives of Atlanta, but that's a whole different part of the segment. But anyways, I've watched it vastly and rapidly approach 300K, but I hadn't received since January any new advertisers. And it was like I was doxxed for some reason. But since I had that discussion with the people at the help desk at Podbeam, now I'm getting the impressions. It's reflective in, if I have 3,000 listeners, individual unique listeners per month, and the downloads are going crazy, why am I not seeing any advertising revenue? And it is as if my podcast, there's billions of podcasts out there, but why is it such that the ones that are submitting to Podbeam are not seeing my podcast? There's something I guess I'm caught up in some type of algorithm or some type of computer glitch. But now I'm seeing really dope advertisements when you listen to, but it's a trigger. The podcast listeners or downloads have to reach a certain level even with programmatic insertion. It has to reach a certain level before the computer will even sense and insert those advertisements at the certain points. And it appears that the midpoint is the most lucrative. I'm just glad now that whatever they did on the back end, my listeners can not only get access to really dope services through the advertisements, as well as my episodes are getting out to the general masses, and people may notice me, and maybe it'll end up and I'll have a sponsorship that make it more easier to basically take care of the front end between graphic design as well as continuing to edit the sound through primordial sound archives. Raphael Crump at AK Productions is dope. navigate to TNFro Is Reading YouTube channel or the Dale's Angels Inc. YouTube channel to see his clips for each episode. It's like I can describe it and he makes it happen. And it seems like each time it's just funnier and funnier. Was funnier and funnier to me, but then I have a weird sense of humor. I'm just happy that I'm able to continue to do this. I'm an indie podcaster. I'm able to use this is my creative outlet. It's therapy to me. I get to listen to dope stuff, I get to read dope stuff, and then I get to comment on it to people, and I'm allowed to just continue to do that. So anytime anybody wants to hear more or even greater, you need to basically do a couple of things: become a patron, drop me a tip, and then just allow me and Ethel to go on our merry way, eating ramen and talking about stuff and glowing up. And also finding out what is available for my lettuce grow, because I'm also finding that I'm having a lot of fun growing things and then making things with what I'm actually growing, decreasing my personal carbon imprint. It's pretty dope, y'all. And I'm allowed to do all of these things because I get to think outside of the box as I create my podcast. Continue to listen, and thank you for listening. So I'm still reading All Boys Aren't Blue, and I came up with a interesting dichotomy. The author found himself, or was finding not only his gender identity, but just who he was as a person. He talked about his time in junior high when he went to an all-black high school, and the school was named after a commerce secretary, the first black commerce secretary that died in a tragic plane crash. And he relates the history that he received up to that point in the public school system that was essentially whitewashed, and how he came to realize how, for African Americans, Abraham Lincoln was one of the greatest presidents to ever live. He freed the slaves. And I had heard niggles of this all throughout my life, and definitely as I became an adult, but I never really took a deeper dive. I did take U.S. history up through high school, and I can't remember. I did take world history and some other, like Western Civ, but a deeper dive into American presidents, or our history, as it were, uh, was essentially, there was a void in my education up until now. And I only got this uh, through not just my discussions with Kathy Nichols, but also just by reading this particular book. And I've had to reconcile who I was always taught as honest Abe, as lying racist Abe. I think you can still admire certain parts of someone's presidency, or what they did, or how he led us through one of the most disruptive periods in American history, and still recognize and talk about that they said some pretty jacked up shit. And I wouldn't receive that until I read a non binary author's book, All Boys Aren't Blue, and his discovery of all the truths and untruths about the American experience. Abraham Lincoln. Also, even though he was vehemently against slavery, he was straight up gangster and basically said that he still was a white supremacist. He was, even though he didn't wear a hood, he still believed in those ideals. He was no different than any white man during those periods. And the whitewashing and the elevation to angelic that people want, or sainthood that people want to make of Abraham Lincoln, y'all need to stop tripping, because he was no saint. He was a man of his period. He was a white racist in his stance. He firmly believed that no man should own another man, but he did never. He was unequivocal in his belief that we were not equal. So this is I'm going to take the time to read this in its totality, because although I think the author of All Boys Are Not Blue did a really good job in integrating this into his narrative, I think I've gained more from it when I read this debate in its totality. Those inflammatory statements were made at the beginning of the Lincoln Douglas debates from September 18th, 1858. And the point of the debate was the constitutionality of bringing Kansas into the Union. He was asked earlier, he addressed it up top, and he said, and that's all I got to say on that. He was very Forrest Gump about it. And also, he was doing, wait a minute. I repeat my charge that Trumbo did falsify the public records of the country in order to make his charge against me, and I tell has this they endorse that he didn't, but he kind of did. So plagiarism, some convention bullshit, but okay. Anyways, they were having a debate of what I said previously, but here it is, Mr. Lincoln's portion. He says, it will be very difficult for an audience so large as this to hear distinctly what the speaker says. So consequently, it's important that as profound silence be preserved as possible. While I was at the hotel today, this is in Lincoln, y'all, an elderly gentleman called upon me to know whether I was really in favor of producing a perfect equality between the Negroes and the white people. While I had not proposed myself on this occasion to say much on that subject, yet as the question was asked me, I thought I would occupy perhaps 5 minutes in saying something in regard to it. I will say then that I am not, nor ever have been, in favor of bringing about in any way the social and political equality of the white and black races. He goes on to say that my understanding is that I can just let her alone. I am in my 50th year. I've never had any slaves or wives of Negroes. I will add to this that I have never seen, to my knowledge, a man or woman or child who was in favor of producing perfect equality, social, political, between Negroes and white men. And he says he doesn't want to own slaves, thinks it's wrong to own slaves, but that doesn't mean that we are equal in any way. I had never heard this, but I was easily able to pull this up from the Teaching American History website. And again, the point of the debate was the falsification of public record as it was for bringing Kansas into the Union. He basically goes on to say that he saw slavery as a disruption to the Union, or the Union of the United States. It needed to end. One, it was wrong. It needed to end. And that's how we were going to keep the Union together. However, he says, I'm in no way of thinking that we were equal. So what did he propose to do with us then? That's my question. So where were we supposed to go? I think if he had actually lived, there would have been a repatriation to us in Africa, or we would have been kicked out and made to go to Haiti or some other country. I don't think it would have been safe for us to remain here. I think we would have been exported back to where our origins were. And it would have just been as disruptive as slavery was. And when they broke up our families, when they worked us to death, when they starved us to death, and when they tortured us. He did not believe in intermarriage. He believed in the absolute supremacy of white folks. He thought that white men were equal, but said nothing of women. And it was not that he wanted to give us women the vote. These are all this racist, white supremacist stance, because he was the epitome of the old grand party, the Republicans. He was the Grand Master. He was the original Klan leader right there. Abraham Lincoln, I would project that he was the original first low-key Grand Wizard, head of the old Grand Party, and these ideas are still firmly Republican. That's why I still to this day can't understand why any African American is a Republican. This is what this party, the basis of this party is based on: white supremacy, anti mixed marriage, and only equality for white men. They are misogynist and they are bigoted, and there's no place for any other in that party. And it's just so, he was looked at as a white savior, but he could care less about our stance, our equality. But he had no, once he freed us, what was supposed to happen to us? That's what I'm going to not only continue to read, because that was one of the main themes that I wanted to talk about this week, as far as all boys are not are blue. But I'm also going, and I'm gonna make the general effort to see if he had a plan for us. Really, once we were free and we were not equal, what was his proposition? Where were we supposed to go if we couldn't stay, if we were not equal to the other citizens, or we weren't even considered citizens? Where were we supposed to do? How were we supposed to live after we were free? And did Abe Lincoln and his cronies have a plan? I'm not sure. Butterfly in the sky, I can go twice as high. Take a look, it's in a book, a reading TNFro. I can go anywhere. Friends to know, ways to grow, a reading TNFro. I can be anything. Take a look, it's in a book, a reading TNFro. A reading TNFro. TNFro. So Sunday, to me, is the New York Times. It was the style section, and then now it's mostly the book review and the arts and leisure section. This week, I got a twofer for additions to my Far From Beale Street bookstore. Navigate to bookshop.org or type in Far From Beale Street Bookshop, and you'll have access to my online store. Or just navigate to my Dell's Angels Inc. blog, and you can actually uh, order the book, which is usually cheaper on Amazon. And to get these two editions. The two from speaking of is Colson Whitehead's Crook Manifesto. He dazzled us with the Nickel Boys, and he also with the best-selling author of Harlem Shuffle. And this time he returns back to the 1970s New York in all of its seedy glory, which I think is wild because this year marked the 50th anniversary that Yoko Ono also made her and John Lennon made this apartment building a classic, and she actually has lived there for over 50 years this year, which I think is wild. She has evidently she has 5 apartments, which they use for living space, a studio, and storage. And just the living space in the studio comprises about 6,000 square feet, which is double the size of my actual house. And she has that in an apartment space. That blows my mind. But anywho, this harkens back to that time and one of the main protagonists, um, Ray Carney, in his new legit business as a furniture store, goes down the rabbit hole of intrigue and uh, what are they called? The Three Stooges like capers, to get his daughter tickets to the Jackson Five. You got a dirty beat cop, white at that, and just in time for the bicentennial celebration, where literally New York City is on fire. Check this out. It is $26.97 on my website. I believe it's a definitely less than that, and that's the hardcover price. But it'll be cheaper than that on Amazon. So check it out and let me know what you think, as well as A History of African Americans Abroad, Beyond the Shores by Tamara J. Walker. I think this book is going to be dope because I've been toying around with Blacksit for many years. I had Noelle Ojo on the show, and she talked about the Blacksit effect. And this is a compilation of biographies of several African Americans that may have made the trek across the pond in different areas of the world. And Paris is one of those places where a lot of us end up, or have ended up, like the James Baldwins of the world. Even when we are overseas, it seems like racism and white supremacy follows us. I mean, each England and America, from a capitalist standpoint, have in colonization and imperialism have made their effects on how a lot of the socioeconomic status, and through the wars and through the perception, they take on the American. They want the American dream, but they also take on the American prejudice as it is relates to African Americans. And sometimes we have to still overcome American racism or the white supremacy, and it's glaring and it's microaggressions, etc. All overseas, we leave to escape it, but we run head right on into it. Um, and I think Tamara Walker does a very good job, or an amazing job of, as far as who, when they profiled her, Chad Williams profiled her in the New York Times book review. But she does an amazing job of our search for identity and those things that still plague us here in America. And if you try to do that and escape it, you're going to run head on into it. I think that's basically the point of her work. So check that out. It's listed for a whopping $26.04, the hardcover, on my website, but I'm sure it's cheaper on Amazon. So check out the link to Amazon, and then let me know what you think. What else I got going on? Oh, the next segment, I'm going to be talking at length with uh, Kathy Nichols. She is a podcaster of one of the contributing co-hosts of Wild Women Who Write, and she is an author, four-time author of The Substitute Sister, Trust Issues, The Unreliables, and The Sometimes Sister. I'm thinking about starting with Trust Issues, because The Sometimes Sister, The Unreliable, and The Substitute Sister are all, they are like almost a trifecta of perfection and mystery. But and it's around a central character that's reoccurring in those three. But Trust Issues, which was released back in 2022, this is about a rising star in a prominent Atlanta public relations firm who can fix anything except for herself. That's Claire Kincaid. And she shows up at a couples workshop without a partner. And then Kevin Thomas swoops in and rescues her from humiliation by posing as her fiance. I find that intriguing, but Why do you show up at a couple's workshop and you ain't with nobody? That to me is hysterical. If I can get the link, it's available on paperback on my website or the electronic bookstore. But if I can actually get this, I think it's going to be a jolly good read. And also, it's a great introduction into the incredulity as well as how fascinating I found her in the next session as I interview you and you guys get to know her as well. So check out um, this book, Trust Issues by Kathy Nichols, and you'll hear more from her, the author, directly in this next section. So good afternoon, everyone. I have the pleasure of talking to, I'm going to call you my very good friend.
I like it.
Kathy Nichols of, what is it, Wild Women That Write?
Wild Women Who Write.
Wild Women Who Write podcast. And we're really close neighbors in the South. If you're within 150 miles, you're neighbors. So I'm just saying. So Kathy, can you go ahead and introduce yourself to the listening audience?
Yes, I'm Kathy Nichols. I spent over 30 years in the high school classroom teaching English. I came to writing novels a little bit later in life. I've had 4 novels published, with the 5th one coming, and I write about strong women. I believe in strong women, and I believe that it's going to be through recognizing our strength as women that we can communicate better across color lines, is what I'm hoping.
Awesome. Now, this is a honest, abashed plug for your books. You've written 4 novels. Are they in sequence, or is there one of yours? I'm going to recommend that you read all of them, but is there one that the listeners should start with?
If you start with The Sometime Sister, I wrote it to be a standalone, but my characters were not done with me. So between The Sometime Sister and the sequel, which is The Substitute Sister, I wrote 2 standalones. I would start with The Sometime Sister because I think you'll want to read the sequel. And then I hope you'll go to my standalones, Trust Issues and The Unreliables.
Awesome. As well as, now, are you able, or do you like, or do you think it's superstitious to talk about what you're working on next?
Oh no, I'll talk about anything. I love. I'm working. Actually, the book that's coming out in September is called False Claims, and it's the first of a planned series. Lucy Howard is not an amateur detective, but she gets pulled into things. She has a very colorful Southern type family, although I'm sure Northern people have the same issues. I think it was Julia Sugarbaker on Designing Women who said, we like to put our crazy, Northern people put their crazy people in the attic. We like to bring ours to the parlor.
Right. And the parlor on the front porch.
Exactly. And show them to the world. So exactly. I have in it a narcoleptic gay uncle. I have his delightful, very strong country music playing and rock playing partner, and they will get married eventually. I have some very shady men, shady characters, slip it up of identity, all sorts of fun things. And my next one that I'm planning will be second in the series. You could read them in either order.
That's awesome. And when can we expect that?
False Claims comes out September 9th.
Of the 2023 or 2024?
Yeah, soon.
That's awesome. Okay, and also, how did we actually connect?
Well, I've been urging people who want to get their message out to take a look at matchmaker.fm.com. You need that FM in there, or you'll get all kinds of fun things that you may not be interested in. So I found Felicia, and I was reading, and she lives near Chattanooga. You're not, are you in, or are you on the border?
I actually am I'm on the border of Hamilton County, but I'm in what is called the North Shore of Chattanooga.
Gotcha. And my brother was very close to you. He's a musician in Chattanooga. And I just love the things you were saying. I love that you said, I have whoever and whatever I want on my podcast. And I said, yes, that's what we should be doing. If it's not fun, don't do it. If you don't like the people you're talking to, move on. Don't talk to them.
And if it's not going to offer, I want to use my platform not just for positivity, but also, and it's my unvarnished opinion on things and what I'm interested in, but I'm hopeful it'll serve as either encouragement or for someone else to do more with what they're doing, or to get more people buying their books after I read them. That is what I want the platform to be. I mean, I started this podcast simply because I was in the armpit of Kentucky and I got tired of being profiled. I wouldn't go out at night. And I read books, and then I found out there are other podcasters that are doing exactly what I do. But I wanted to do it better. And I'm saying, oh, there's platform like this. Oh, well, this is how you can do it. Oh, I have a computer. Record the podcast so you can record it on your phone. It was just that simple. And there was nothing on TV at that time. So
yeah, I what we did with Wild Women Who Write, we started as a critique group. We supported each other. We also were members of a heterosexual critique group, and we loved the opinions of men, but we very quickly came to understand, particularly me, I get so frustrated when men try to write women and they won't listen to women who are explaining to them a woman would never say that. And you get these responses like, well, all women are alike. I'm like, I know this, I'm not a moron, but it's very difficult. So we did both for a while, and now I've moved and it's difficult. But it was so cool because as women supporting each other, 3 of us got published.
wow.
We continue to write, and we continue to do this. That's why we started the podcast, to encourage other female authors. We have men too.
So you basically, through the podcast, actually was published through traditional means, or did you go the indie route like I did, which I think is a waste of time? That's a whole different conversation right there.
I was able to I had an agent, didn't work out, won't go into that, but we had an amicable breakup. And I thought, well, I guess I'll try that again. And then I was so lucky. I saw in Writer's Digest magazine the top 5 independent publishers who did not require an agent. And so I just went online and submitted my novel, The Sometime Sister. And they said it sometimes takes 6 weeks to 3 months. They contacted me in 2 weeks. I was so excited, and I've been very pleased. It's Black Rose Writing. They have a brick and mortar outfit in Castroville, Texas, but we of course communicated through the internet and email. So I've been very happy with them. Their covers are cool. Publishing independently is so hard. I would have done it. I would have waited as long as possible, but it's so hard. The editing, if you don't, I'm a good editor, but if I'm going independently, I feel like I should have paid for it, and you pay for the cover design. And so it's not that I have anything against independent publishers. I will say some people don't do it well, and they give the rest of you guys who do it well, they do give a bad name to it, and people are steer away from it because of that, which is a shame because some of it is wonderful.
Some of it depends on if you get the right setup. As an indie author, maybe 1 or 2 a year actually they end up being received well on the New York Times. They're very few and far between. I went through Author House, and I can tell the package, a lot of the upfront costs and some of the service that you pay for are not needed. And it's cost prohibitive to do it. And I think you get really jacked around as far as that. Knowing what I know now, if I had known, because I now get Writer's Digest and there are other reputable independent publishing, and there's just a different way. I would not have published Not My Family the way that I had it published. I'm glad I got the copyrights. I own that. So, because that's another thing when you are indie and independent, the Vanity Press may still own though, but I own it. So at least I can go somewhere else and take my book somewhere else and republish it if I so chose. So, and I had to learn all of that.
Yeah,
The
it's
whole
a
payment with
steep learning
royalties
curve.
or non-payment, it's really difficult to make it as an indie author, self-published author, because there's so many scandals and things like that. So, but I'm so glad personally that we were able to connect on Matchmaker. I actually found it by, wanting to take my podcast and to another level. I found out that I got more traction with those episodes that it wasn't just me and Ethel or me yelling at Ethel, even though that
Right.
was funny, commenting that was kind of funny. But I found that I can expand my knowledge and just the interconnection with people if I did interviews. And the most successful podcasts are when there's a host and co-host, or when it's like an interview kind of format. So I wanted to mix it up with other creatives like myself, other podcast hosts, and just people in general that, again, have the same interests as me and have the same issues, or what are our challenges in this space. And being in the South now has become not safe. And how I'm going to quantify that is for a lot of different reasons. I'll be 52 this August, and I've lived in the South all of my life. I've worked all over the United States. And it really wasn't until when I started the podcast at the beginning of the Trump administration, I have never felt in my space and my skin unsafe. And the reason why I feel unsafe, I call us the Piano Keys. This is going to be the Piano Keys series. I'm an African-American middle-aged woman. I am firmly upper middle class. But I still have a big old Bubba truck. You can't see it in the background, but it's around there. It's on my profile, I think. I put the picture up when I first brought it home from Texas. So, but I'm literally a punk. I'm not allergic to bugs. I was just telling you before we started. I have my raid because I don't like being stung, because I don't like pain. But I literally still, even with my education, even with my Bubba truck, even with being my salary, whatever, I still feel completely unsafe in my own skin in certain conditions. Tennessee had been better for a while until some drama that's recently happened. Also, now the NAACP this year put out a warning to deter African Americans from going to Florida. And there is a whole slew of things, an anti-woke campaign, turning back the clock as far as what is it? The laws that make you treat people correctly, affirmative action, more so with Roe v. Wade, that turned over. The January 6th riot, one of the Superior Court judges, his wife, Jenny, may have participated in that. I have a lot of concerns, and I think that make me feel unsafe. And where does it stem from? Now we can't even, they calling sensibility training now reverse racism. They don't want you to say gay. They don't want you to talk about the actual slavery. They don't want you to talk about racism. And they're rolling back. As a teacher, I would actually be annoyed if I was in an AP class and I could not get a real history, an unvarnished real history. And that's where I think we picked up on, and that's why we're doing this series. And it all stems from Florida. You were talking about not being able to want to go down there and retire. I like any state where I don't have no state income tax. I love the Florida beaches. I love Destin. I love the coast. I love the Gulf. I love Atlantic. However, I'm not going because I don't feel safe, because we got Florida man's De Fuhrer in there. Go. And why?
Yeah, I'm so angry because I have so many wonderful memories of going to the beach as a child and taking my children to the beach. And I went recently only because it was part of a big family thing. And I hated spending money there, which is sad because, you know, there are people there who don't feel the way, I don't even like to say his name, I think it's like Voldemort, but don't feel like their governor feels, but they don't speak up a lot of times. And a lot of times they don't speak up because I don't know why. I really don't know why they don't speak up. I think sometimes when people are afraid to speak up and they do, they find out, oh, that wasn't so bad. Nothing happened. But it's so frustrating and frightening because we don't really know how it, well, I do know how it got started. It was our former president, the twice impeached, multiply indicted former president. And the problem was he made it okay to say things out loud that people were still thinking, but they knew it was wrong to feel that way. They knew in their heart it was wrong, because otherwise they would have been saying it. But he gave them permission and an excuse and an example of how to be horrible. And then the governor of Florida decided to take that to its extreme limits. It's totally backfiring on him. People don't like him. He doesn't, I don't know how people say, like you said, chump. I don't know how he had any charisma. I never understood it. He was just gross. But for some people, he struck a chord. DeSantis doesn't strike that chord.
No.
He comes across as being mean and spiteful and petty. And even if you like his horrible policies, you can't really get into him. So he's not going to make it. And I don't really.
It's like Trump released the Kraken. You hit
Yes.
it on the head. He made it okay to say horrible things and to be horrible, but DeSantis has taken it again to the extreme, and he's not doing it charismatically, because he's basically, it's like his whole campaign is devolving into a big crusty mess. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. And also, the state is becoming a mess. The people can't get their homes insured. And as governor, he should have been doing something about that. He didn't. He could have. The Disney thing is a mess. They are, if they continue to shut down new businesses, new resort areas, there's so many people who are going to suffer with no jobs. And this business of the schools, oh my God, if I was in Florida in the public schools, I would do, or private, I would do whatever I could to get out of that state, because I taught AP English, and I taught the one that was more about editorials and nonfiction. You can't deal with anything if you don't deal with implicit bias, with the fact that women have been condescended to, Black women, they don't even register on the chart. It's just so unfair. And I feel as a white woman, I haven't done enough to say that's not right, although I'm pretty good at saying, no, that's not right.
Do you feel yourself like the lone wolf howling in the wind sometimes?
Not as often as you'd think, because I am surrounded by a lot of like-minded people, and the people who are not like-minded, they know what I think, and they know I'm not going to sit quietly and go, well, that doesn't affect me, so I'm not going to talk about it. And like the critical race theory crap.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people for some reason think that that's a safe topic. It's like a code. Are you racist? And that's exactly what it is. It's like people will say, well, how do you feel about critical race theory? I'll say,
And you're like,
well,
I don't know, because I don't know what it is. I don't understand it. I'm not a lawyer. It is not for me. I don't understand it. So
I looked it up and I thought, I'm going to understand this enough to say the 5 tenets of it. I can't even remember them. And I'm very smart. I said, there is no way in hell anybody could be teaching this anywhere in grades, even it's a postgraduate course. So
Correct.
people don't know what it is. And to me, it is exactly a code
But
to
it's like a
ask
dog,
for you.
like a dog whistle to people that are racist and that are bigoted, because they don't understand what it is. So that means nobody can teach it, but it's not, it's just, we should be able to teach it. It's just not for us. Graduate level, it's a 4,000 level course, graduate level course. Let it stay in the graduate level. And you basically banning it high school. Okay, fine. But it's there, but it's not for a high schooler. It's not for an undergraduate student, and it's okay, but you shouldn't ban it across the board. But that should not
Exactly.
also be, because that's not what the 1619 Project is about. You can't ban everything that talks about in our history, previous, like Civil War, previous to the Civil War. You can't ban that based on using that as it relates to something else.
It's literally whitewashing history.
Literally.
And we can't do that. I believe, and I hope it will happen faster than some trends do. I do believe that this is going to be one of those things at some point where people go, what the hell? What are we thinking?
My gratitude is to Matchmaker.fm, the online platonic collaboration or connections for creatives. Um, I'm glad for them to be able to allow me to connect to interesting people like Karl Swanepoel. He's actually the CEO and creator behind Revelancer. Young guy, complete millennial. Started his first business at 13, a collaborative platform that he would eventually sell for a profit. And he's done it again with this platform, Revelancer. Although I was not as familiar with this particular platform prior, but it is a way to actually, it's different than Fiverr, where you sign up for free and then you basically can match your skill set with the needs of someone else. Revelancer just acts as a free go between platform. Um, it seems like it's free, completely free right now. Somehow on the back end, for continued services and for more advanced services, they've decided that they would monetize it. I'm more interested in how you get financing for something that is so free. For freelancers, it allows you to not have so many upfront costs to get established with graphic design, coding, etc. on the front end, and you don't pay them a fee. I mean, it is completely free, y'all. Navigate to revelancer.com, check it out, get signed up, and then let me know how it goes. But in our conversation, he introduces the audience to this revolutionary platform for freelancers. And I think you'll enjoy first this part, as far as part one, which has been edited for time. And I will continue it next week in the rest of it for completion. So you'll get a better understanding of this service. And here he is, the youngest boss I've met in a very long time, Karl Swanepoel. Just mind blown. But go ahead.
Well, I started with graphic design and web development, which I kind of taught myself using some YouTube videos and whatnot. And then, kind of scaled up from there, realized quite quickly that these platforms just weren't really working the way I wanted them to. I didn't think they were working very well for freelancers, like didn't have freelancers' best interest at heart. Mm-hmm. So that's when I decided, when I was 15, to start a freelancing platform, which I ended up having to sell because I was too young to have a PayPal account and they kept kicking me off.
So you were aged out of PayPal, so you couldn't get paid because you were too young. Oh my gosh, because you couldn't enter into a contract. Oh, that's crazy. Oh, that is
Well,
hysterical.
it's actually a bit worse because essentially, buyers were paying into the PayPal accounts. The majority of the money going into the PayPal accounts was actually belonging to the freelancer. So, I was taking a small commission fee, but the rest was going to the freelancer. So, it was, I managed to pay everyone, but it was getting very close. And then, fortunately, I was able to find someone who was willing to buy the platform from me.
Oh, that.
So I sold that just before I turned 16. And then, worked on a few more different projects, went to university. And then halfway through my final year, I realized it's been 8 years since I started freelancing or so. These big platforms simply have not changed anything since, in those 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
We were like in the middle of a pandemic then, or we were still in a lockdown in the UK at the time.
Mm-hmm.
That's changed how we work remotely with video calling, for example. So then I thought, well, I'm older than 18 now, so I want to really have a shot at building, a freelancing platform that really changes the whole space for the better. And that's kind of where I got started then in early 2021.
And so 2021, and then you had your successful financing round. When was that, 2021 or 2022?
We've raised kind of a few different kind of rounds or like pots of funding. Starting in like November of 2021. That's when we raised our first VC funding.
And the difference between, again, all the big platforms, previous platforms, are monetized, but they have not changed their way of offering a true service to the true freelancer. And your platform is such that, one, it's not monetized at this point. And then two, is there a industry that Revelancer is key at this time, or is it all takers and everyone?
Yeah, so it's mainly kind of creative freelancers. So, we see mostly like graphic design, web development, media, and marketing. Those are kind of the main four, but it absolutely spans further than that as well. Yeah.
And by no means, you are not an agency. You're not an employment agency like Indeed or any of those others, and definitely not Fiverr, because there are no upfront or even at this time back end fees. So it is completely a free service in a marketplace for the producer as well as the recipient to get together to collaborate without you guys, because you're not the middleman. You provide the platform, but you're really not the middleman at this time. You just basically foster communication. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And if you are able to talk about it, what are some KPIs that this is a successful platform? What should investors look for as far as why is it successful? Why should it be more successful? That besides the growth of user growth, what other things besides user growth should investors should look for?
No, well, we have extremely good engagement, but just putting that aside, one thing, probably the main thing that is impressed about our platform is that freelancers like the product to the point where they will tell other freelancers about it, and that's very much that's exactly what we're trying to do, and we're constantly improving at that as well. But ultimately, my philosophy is that at its core, the product has to be so good for the target audience that they will, without even thinking about it, tell other freelancers about it and recommend the platform. And then if we have that going, then we can do all kinds of paid advertising and so on, just to kind of pour fuel on the fire. But you need that at its core to actually build a really successful platform.
Okay. And my core audience is female. It's female leaning, 45 to 55. Are there certain type of freelancers that you see that have the biggest success on your platform?
Sure. I mean, I wouldn't know like off the top of my head for that particular demographic, like what kind of what kind of freelance services have the most success on the platform. Um, but just speaking generally, it really comes down to graphic design, web development, media, and marketing. Those kind of four key ones. But there are also plenty of freelancers seeing great success in more kind of niche industries as well. So yeah, I mean, our platform is growing quite fast at the moment, and I very much expect it to continue to do so. So, every day there are plenty more people who will be interested in what you do on there.
So awesome. Give us the website of if we would just want to look around and check out and sign up for Revelancer. Where can we go?
Yeah, so you just go to revelancer.com or Google it and it'll come up.
And awesome. And where would you personally like to be found on social media or even email address you possibly would like to give that for additional questions or for any follow up information?
So yeah, I mean, my an email address where you can reach me at is on my personal website. So if you just Google my name, it'll come up. And the best place to connect with me outside of that is on LinkedIn. So again, just Karl Swanepoel on LinkedIn, and I'll be there.
I actually followed you and I'm following Revelancer, and it's really a pleasure again for you to basically take the time out of your busy day to talk to a nerd like me in the US. And that's the other thing. You're in the UK right now, is that correct?
Yes, I am.
Yep. And I'm sitting here in my house in Chattanooga, Tennessee. When technology works, it works great. And I think just the idea of learning about new services that, from an international standpoint, for creatives like me, knowing about these services, to expand and to brand, that is how I see usage for the just the average Joe, here in the United States, being able to access a source like Revelancer. So I'm very glad to be able to bring this information to the audience.
Yeah, it's been a real pleasure. Thanks very much for having me, and I hope this has been useful.
Awesome. Wait a minute. The Shady Bunch, the Shady Bunch. I hope turning up for checks to pay for fake lifestyles were to be a part of the Shady Bunch. So, what's going on in the popular culture zeitgeist? Rest in power to Catherine Burks Brooks, one of the last freedom riders. She had the last word and she passed away today in Birmingham at the age of 21 as a freedom rider. She was, of course, she's from Nashville because Tennessee rocks for black folks. And she went back to desegregate public transportation in the South. The first attempt was defeated by violence because she posted up against Bull Connor, the bigoted public safety commissioner of Birmingham. And that's where she passed away from heart failure. What trips me out is 15 years prior to 1961, when the Freedom Rides were going or restarted, the Supreme Court had already ruled that segregated seating on interstate buses and trains was unconstitutional. Yet the southern states was like, well, we don't believe that. And they doing the crap again. And in Alabama, the Supreme Court said the gerrymandered voting precincts was unconstitutional. And they basically saying, well, we don't believe that. Freaking Republicans doing what they do most. They cheat, they scheme, they try to keep African Americans and people of color behind the colored line because they're white supremacists. And that's the whole premise of that party. And she, the original boss chick, the original influencer who rolled up, even when the Klan came up against them with iron pipes and chains and baseball bats, she was like, nah, son, you're basically in violation of federal law. And they basically dialed it back, and then with SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinated Committee, because I had James Farmer, was one of my professors. I still have his book somewhere. And she came back with them and basically was like, she's like, we're going to have to do this because it was in our rights. We don't have to sit in the back of the bus. Y'all need to take those colored signs down and keep it pushing because Jim Crow has flown away. So, and there you have it. It's really dope when you have someone like her that stand up to bullies. And I find it within myself. It's honorable that she's from my state, from Nashville, and did it worked in that arena for most of the totality of her life. So big ups to Miss Burks. And I go from righteous to ratchet. Real Housewives of Atlanta. I found the after show is very informative because I have, especially in the last episode of the after show, that some of the stars of the series, they basically feel just as confused as I am. Most of them think that Drew is fake. They let the cat out of the bag about, even though it appears that they haven't had any special tapings, because since Drew's and Ralph's divorce has fallen apart, I think we're going to get the deets in the after show without them having to re-record a whole bunch of ish. Now they're in Portugal, and Kenya has literally busted her ass. It's been raining like every single day, and y'all remember when the girls from Real Housewives of Potomac went to Portugal and they had puncha puncha puncha. So why don't they go to the puncha place? And they're just at the wrong time of year. They are in Portugal during the rainy season. At least they're not there during protests, because that's what's the issue with Barcelona in the previous seasons. But anyways, and I also think that the reality of this show is you got one of the fakest, most selfish housewives, Sherry White, aka Sheree Whitfield, on a healing quest for herself, and she's dragging her friends along with it. This Courtney chick, I still don't understand her even being a friend of the show. Why she's so thirsty? I guess because if you're not in a scene, they don't get paid. But she makes Monietta turn up, who seems to be one of the nicest people on the planet. So, wow. Good luck with that. And I just can't stand Marlo just poking and poking and poking and going below the belt, and her over the top, quote unquote, fashions. It just drives me crazy. But I'm here for the food, I'm here for the drinks, and I'm wondering whose ass is going to get beat, because they all getting on my nerves a little bit. But I also am really sorry for Kenya Moore and her falling down. Either she must have either pulled something or blew out something. Her what did Nene Leakes call her, blow up booty, didn't cushion her fall, because she fell and bit it, and it was not cute. Okay, so I watch most all of the franchise of Real Housewives. Bravo gets a lot of my time, and this is no different. I was watching Lauren Lake Paternity Court when I turned it on to the Real Housewives Ultimate Girls Trip. I landed on, I was like, why is Cynthia and Kenya on Ultimate Girl Trip? I'm referring to season 1, episode 7, Go Big Before You Go Home. I had no idea that number one, either one of them was on this series. Also, I did not know that they fell out. Cynthia's in the confessional, is talking about the group dynamics and how she gives and gives and gives. And she came and on the trip, but then she didn't get the same ride or die back from Cynthia. This is from a few years ago. I wonder if this was when they fell out, kind of on the show, when she was like, well, at the time, Kenya and her messy ass basically was like, well, I should know because she's my best friend. And then Cynthia, when Nene came back, she was like, well, we're working towards that. We're close, but she's not my BFF like Nene and them were. So now she is, maybe after that, this is when she revealed that on Real Housewives of Atlanta. So this was Kenya's messy way of getting her back. I'm interested in finding out, was this also when, right before, I don't think, no, she's not married yet because she ended up giving some prize from the Bailey Bowl to Teresa Gudice, because Teresa is not married yet. She's just gotten out of jail and she just started dating her current husband. And also this is way before, yeah, because she is not until like what, season 10 or season 11 when Kenya secretly married Mark Daly. And because she's not dating anyone on, while she's on season 1 of Real Housewives Ultimate Girls Trip. So this is probably around that time when Cynthia forsaked her. So, okay, good luck with that. Maybe she was still, or it was the aftermath after or right before Matt, but it was in the in between time when it was up in the air and she was completely offended by Cynthia's lack of fealty to her. So now on another, while they're taping the Housewives Girl Trip, now she's trying to serve a platter of mess, and it's best served hot with hot tea because that's what's going on. Really, Drew? Really? So you make out with Latoya, get turned out, and get found out because Candace outs you, and Ty Young, and you get caught up in Ty Young's affair with her because you lie worse than Portia Williams Gabadia did, and you ain't good at it, girl. That's why you be making me mad because you just be lying, just be lying. I left my heart in San Francisco. No, was it New York? I remember when Bookman sung that on Good Times. I'm gonna have to find that to put as the first part of this episode because that was hysterically funny. And I'm watching Real Housewives of New York and I'm thoroughly enjoying it for whatever reason. I okay, let me stop lying. I hated the first iteration because I thought even when they added the black girl, I thought that all of them were stupid, vapid, and fake. Bethany Frankel, she was the lead faker, even with Skinny Girls. Now, don't get me wrong. I think all these bitches on this season all got eating disorders. But how you go to the Hamptons, Sag Harbor in particular, off season, and all you serve is caviar, beluga, of course, on Pringles, girl, really. That's why Uma, who is giving me superstar Kenya Moore Naomi Campbell, all wrapped into one. Hangry vibes. Oh my God. Erin, whose house they go to, she got 800 kids and she's still skinny as a rail because all she eats is a half a carrot every day. Girl, I can't. I don't even know what the other woman of color. This is a lot. This is probably one of the most representative of New York high society or just New York in general because there's literally three women of color. I think she is Hispanic or Latino. I don't know her name, but there is Uba, who is probably from the motherland, and she is fabulous. And then there is Jenna, the token lesbian, and oh, Jessel. Jessel is giving me pent up bitch vibes. And you remember on what's his name with Raj, Big Bang Theory. Raj was going to marry or get with that girl who was actually gay. Jessel and her husband, who she has not slept with in 2 years, girl, bye. They are giving me beard and gay vibes. What man is not going to sleep with you and he ain't cheating on you? Maybe he really loves you and y'all got this great relationship. I don't know. And they don't use toys. There ain't no bedroom candy up in that bitch. I can't. I'm so tired of her already. She's making my head hurt. But everybody, even Jenna Lyons, who won't reveal who she is in a relationship with, all of them start out as fabulously wealthy and married. Bryn is not there yet, but she is coming off as the quintessential airhead, fabulously rich socialite, but she ain't that stupid. So I'm gonna have to seek her out and find out why she seems to be so fabulous to me. But all of them seem to be fabulous. I think Erin is kind of pent up, Jewish girl. She's having to reconcile her Judaism and Orthodoxness with the nonsense that is this show. And I think she's going to do, and we're going to be in for some great TV watching. I think Jenna's going to let down her on the spectrum self and where she's going to find her true self. I didn't know she was outed by the New York, did she say the New York Post? Who does that and gets away with it? Oh, I'm here for these hoes. And I think I'm going to have to put them on my watch list. I like reviewing them. I don't think anybody else, there's no after show that I know of yet, but I'm here for the craziness. I'm so glad they rebooted this show and they picked these set of women because we are in for another new season and seasons to come of nonsense. If you need to tune out off of your mundane regular life and you want fabulous New York, other worldly life, and people before the tax dudes and all the alphabets and the federal government come back for them for not paying taxes and some RICO shit, y'all need to watch Real Housewives of New York because this is promising to be the wild ride of the century, and I am so here for it. It almost make me want to start getting knee injections, lose weight on Ozempic so I can go to BravoCon so I can meet these hoes. But I ain't fit to do any of that, so stop it. And that's it for this episode of TNFro Is Reading. You know, I talked cash-ish all last year. I hope the listening audience will continue to enjoy my opinion and not so subtle shade. I mean, I'm 2,000 listeners per episode in, so go run tell that, haters. I may take it on the road If I get hint sponsorship, navigate to dalesangelsinc.blog for swag and extended podcast notes. Don't forget to hit like or leave a 5-star review. It gets me on top of the algorithms, and it may just get you on my show. 2023's motto is boss up and get the bag. And as always, tell a friend, and thank you for listening.